that wonderful work, as the earlier speakers lamented, within a very short time. Madam Speaker, the Special Select Committee is mandated by this August Assembly to carry out this function within this period as we fight the COVID-19. And they're expected to report to this August Assembly regarding their findings as stated in the motion that would in place this committee. However, I find it somehow contradictory. The caption of the report and the recommendation made by the committee. That is to say, the final report of the Select Committee of the National Assembly on the implementation of the state of public emergency. And therein in the report, the committee recommended for the extension of the state of the public emergency. I believe if the state of public emergency is extended, in a nutshell also, the committee's mandate would be thereafter extended. And we expect the committee to come back with yet another report or more reports, depending on the lifespan of the committee. And therefore, as earlier on observed, the word final may not be fitting in the report at this juncture. I would therefore also recommend that we replace it with the word preliminary report. Madam Speaker, referring to the tier of the committee, one, to scrutinize regulation made in pursuance of the state of public emergency and monitor their implementation. Holistically, at one point, the committee indicated that some amendments were made to the regulations. And I'm not sure whether actually those amendments actually captured all the recommendations that were made in this preliminary that are supposed to be amended. There, I would like the committee to relate the report to that of the report of the Human Rights Committee and that of the report of the Health Committee, because we said the committee should make use of both the reports of the Human Rights and that of the Health Committee. But more importantly, in trying to do amendments to the regulations, we will expect that those recommended in the Human Rights Report should all be fully captured. Enforce the implementation by the executive of the state of public emergency within the remit of the law, as noted, and to ensure that the government provides the necessary mechanism for the implementation of the regulations. I would not actually see what is the take of the committee as far as this specific term of reference is concerned. What is the take of the committee to this effect? And today they are here, or yesterday, to advising us whether to revoke or extend the state of public emergency. And they've got the adequate updating from the various stakeholders that they met, as indicated in the report, and any other tasks that the committee considers necessary for the effective execution of its mandate. If there are other taxes that the committee has considered necessary, the committee should also inform this August Assembly that these were the other taxes that we have added to our mandate. Madam Speaker, to this effect, I would simply ask if the committee, as advised by this plenary, actually acted on the report of the Human Rights Committee, and if so, they better explain, and if no, why, as well as the report of the Health Committee, as advised by the plenary. Having made those observations, I now go into the content of the report. The objectives of the committee: one is to inform the NAMS about the state of the implementation of regulation and their effect on the lives and livelihood of the people and institutions in the country. I think precisely the report, in my view, did not fully address this vital objective. And I would like the chair to dilate if I stand to be corrected or otherwise. If I may read, inform the NAMS about the implementation state, inform the NAMS about the state of the implementation of the regulations, their effects on the lives and livelihood of people and the institutions in the country. I would like the chair to specifically dilate on this vital objective. Under the Ministry of Interior, the ministry expressed their constraint in terms of personal protective equipment, such as masks to help protect themselves in the course of their work and enforcement. But one thing I want to believe is also the lack of personnel as well for the ministry to effectively execute, for the security personnel to effectively carry out their functions is also available. The regulation mentioned, the regulations cover the whole of the country. But I observed that in trying to implement these regulations, where the police stations are available, that's where more enforcement is focused on, or reinforcement is focused on. For example, the issue of prayers. I went to the rural areas where the police stations are of distance. The people continue to observe their prayers. But those areas that are close to police stations, they are restricted from praying. And then the people have no choice but to move to those areas and then pray. So in my view, the number of the security personnel is also limiting them to carry out these functions. It's not only the equipment that retard them from carrying out their functions, and whether we'll have that adequate number of security officials to be able to effectively carry out those functions is an issue that remains to be answered. Under the Ministry of Finance, there is revelation of the 500 million pledge that is made to the health, and then the amount of money also that got from the World Bank. But I will expect we get the total amount of money that is raised as far as the COVID-19 is concerned. Whether this amount stated, the 500, and then the amount from the World Bank is the only amount that is raised as far as the COVID-19 is concerned, I want the chairperson to explain. I could recall when the president was addressing the public on the relief package, he did mention about $700 million is spent on this relief package. I would not know how that will corroborate with the report that you are given, and whether that is has captured this or not. I would like you to reflect on it. The concerns raised by the security services that they emphasize that in order to do their patrols quickly and to do interceptions effectively, they will need high-speed patrol boats. I think it will be important this being reflective in the recommendations. But if, in my view, that will be very relevant for them to effectively carry out their functions, that should be captured in the recommendation. The Inspector General revealed 13 trucks have been intercepted, and then for smuggling the food commodities out of the country. Now, what happened to those 13 trucks? The drivers and then the goods that were intercepted, what happened to them should also be captured in the report, or should be reviewed or put to you by the Inspector General. It's also reported that 34 drivers have been arrested in connection to the breaking of the regulations. Equally, should go further to explain what had happened to those drivers. If they are being charged and then taken to court, that should also be further explained. That answering to a question posed that active football is taking place across the country, and here they express their lack of manpower to be able to contain that, and all that they can do is through dialogue, whether that has been effective or not, because we have to be very serious as far as this law that there should be no public gathering more than 5 people. We should not have any excuse to be defaulted in trying to ensure that happens. Whether that dialogue has been effective, and what is their take again to ensure that those young children who still continue to play football are being stopped from doing so, to ensure that they are protected. The law is made to ensure their protection. By whatever means, they should try to do so in order to make that possible.
Honorable member, please, can your interventions a little bit, your intervals actually, sorry if I may use the word, the interventions are take a little time.
Religious leaders noted that if the vehicles of the security officers enforcing the regulations are always crowded, it will be difficult to convince ordinary citizens that social distancing must be observed. Here, the religious leaders were just trying to be reserved, but they were saying that there is somehow discrimination or injustice in trying to carry out the law. The law enforcement officers are at the same time trying to flout the law. While they are flouting, will that be an effective measure of trying to ensure the social distancing? If social distancing is not observed in the vehicles of the security officers, why should one be, after for the social distancing, to observe in the mosque? This is what they are saying. And then if the committee would rather advise for the religious leaders to appeal to their congregation to adhere to the laws, you fall short to otherwise advise the security officers not to congest their vehicles. The local government authorities observed the rural council, most of whom depend on revenues collected from the weekly lumos, and as somebody earlier on observed, I have not seen in any of the regulations where the ban on lumos has been captured. If there is, the chairperson can better put that to us. The council authorities expressed concern over potential food insecurity posed on COVID, as most farmers in the rural areas have already started consuming their seeds for the coming rainy season. With this, I'm reminded that relief package has been supposed to be distributed, but the committee's report did not make mention of the relief package. The quantity of this package, the items that are involved, the mode of distribution of these items, the beneficiaries, and how those beneficiaries are identified. I would expect that the committee's report to dilate more on this relief package, but in my view, nothing has been addressed on this relief package. Observation. The amendments the committee observed that were effected by on the regulations, and it said that some of them include the amendments that were recommended at the plenary. But as I said earlier on, whether all the amendments that were recommended were captured, the committee should look into that. Banjul Ferry Terminal. The Banjul Ferry Terminal reported that they sized down the number of the passengers. But again at the terminal, from the gate to the ramp is always full to capacity. And this has been reported. I was attending a radio program at one time. Somebody called and corroborated this report, that from the gate to the ramp is always full to capacity. I see no rationale of reducing the capacity of the ferry, and yet still you allow people to be crowded at that area. What we are trying to realize is the social distancing, not in the ferry. Wherever it takes place should be a concern. I think this issue also should be adequately addressed by the ferry authorities. Brikama Car Park. At this juncture, I want to thank the committee for responding, even though it is part of their plan, but I was always in touch with them, and I requested for them to visit Brikama Car Park and Brikama markets. And then they called me and put to me that they will be visiting Brikama Car Park and Brikama markets, and then invited me to be there. I was there, and then I received them adequately. They observed situation on the ground. But one thing that is not captured, as far as the situation at the Brikama Car Park is concerned, is disinfecting the car park twice daily is not addressed in the report. And this was something that is reflected in the regulations, that the authorities should be daily disinfecting the car park twice. But this did not happen, and it's not reflected in the report. Yes, it was reported for the transport fares to be reduced. In fact, that day we told them that the government was working on that. It happened the following day. The announcement was made for the transport fares to be maintained, and then for the fuel, the pump price to be reduced. What was recommended when I visited Brikama Car Park was for the pump price to be reduced by 50%. The minister, yes, indicated this is the biggest reduction, $7 for diesel and $9 for petrol. But to the drivers, they expect 50% reduction the pump price, simply because, and logically, if you are sizing down the capacity of the vehicle to 50% and maintaining the prices as they were, if you reduce the fuel pump only by $7 and $9, that does not commensurate with what the drivers are losing or what they are going to get. What should be commensurating, if the size of the vehicle will be reduced by 50%, they expect the size of the fuel pump price to be reduced by 50%, and they can maintain their prices as well. But extra burden has been put on the people. Now the drivers are doing it on their own. Instead of maintaining their prices, the prices are increased drastically. Areas that can be $35 are increased to $100. Areas that are $10 are increased to $50. Imagine, from Westfield to Banjul this morning, the drivers will charge you $50. So that should be looked into. Brikama market, I don't know whether it is like other markets, but Brikama market is better we don't have this law at all, because this law has increased the burden at Brikama market. The laws are made to ensure social distancing. Go to Brikama market at this time, you'll see what is happening there. The market is full to capacity. Everybody is rushing to make sure they buy, but if at all things were as they used to be, perhaps you can wait at any time you go to the market and buy your things. But now when this time limitation comes, people rush to the market and then the place is down full. There is no security measure that is taking place to ensure the social distancing. The situation is even worse by this regulation. It's better we live as it is rather than trying to put these laws. The laws that are meant to make the situation worse is better to be revisited. Suggestion was made by the people of Brikama market. I think that was also reported by me to the committee, that instead of closing the non-essential food retailers and open the essential food retailers from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., let there be a time frame for the whole market to be open. For them, they will prefer the whole market to be open, perhaps from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. At least people will now have the time to go to the market. There will be nothing like rushing to the market. Rushing will, in fact, promote the congestion. But now when these changes happen, from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. for the food retailers, and then from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. for the non-food retailers. If you go to the market, there will be shops that are selling both the food retailers and the non-food retailers. You expect them to be opening at the same time. In fact, it is difficult for those people even to stay away. Some of them will go close their shops or stores while they will be sitting outside. The essence of the law is to distance them from the market, but not to close the business. If this is not realizing, I think it's better to look at it. The suggestion that is made for temporal marketplaces to be identified, for them to be moved, I think that was recommended at Brikama by the market vendors themselves at the fish market. That those vendors who sell vegetables or perhaps other commodities can be relocated to another area where they can go and then sell their goods. That is going to reduce the congestion in the market. But if you leave everybody to continue selling at the market, that the congestion will not be decongested. I think that suggestion comes. But how can that be effectively done within this period? You want to move them to another location, required putting temporal structures. Are we in position to do that? Do we have the places to man those temporal places? That's another thing. The Ministry of Finance, over the rapid credit facility, and then the central bank trying to defend that it is an autonomous monetary institution that has a quota at the IMF. If you look at the Memorandum of Understanding, it is the Ministry of Finance that is requesting the loan through the central bank, and the central bank is acting. And therefore, what the committee position is, I think, is in line. The central bank is being mandated by the Ministry of Finance to take the loan. The loan is taken on behalf of the Ministry of Finance. If the Ministry of Finance should be taking the central bank should be taking the loan on behalf of the Ministry of Finance, the minister is expected, as required by the Constitution, is expected to come to the National Assembly for approval. If that is not done, I did not see that being mentioned that this is what the minister should do. You defended your position that what the central bank should do, but what the minister should do, that is not reflective in the report. Tourism and culture. I'm happy to have the reports of the association, the Gambia Hotel Associations and Travel Agency Associations, that was laid before the committee, and then they were invited. And the chairperson did call me that they were very pleased, and you listened to them very well, and their case were well heard. But I did not see in the recommendation what you have recommended as far as the hoteliers are concerned. You noted the points that they raised and the points that the minister also raised. But what is your recommendation? To bail out the hotel industry. Your recommendation to bail out the hotel industry, you said it is there. Yes, I would be very happy if you can go over and then further praise me about it. The recommendations, that's the final stage of it. The regulation to be in place to make it offensive for anyone, transport driver or compound owner who assists any authority or who authorize the traveler to enter the country or harbor any visitor or guest from the abroad or in his or her compound without notifying the health authorities can call 1025. When we talk of difficulty in enforcing regulations, and here I found in trying to enforce this regulation also to be problematic. The existing one that we are having are very difficult to be enforced. So in trying to create or introduce another regulation, that will be very difficult to be enforced. To me, any law that is not enforceable is equally no law. It's better we rethink. On the local government, the local government has suggested the market opening time, all markets to be open from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. daily. If they are to be open 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. daily, now in what way? Is it still the same for the non-food retailers to come at this time and then the food retailers also to come at this time? I think the report should be specific on it. The fumigating the markets is an issue. It is in the regulation, but it's not addressed. Mandatory face masks to be worn by everyone selling or entering the markets. If there is adhered to and there is social distancing in the market, can equally address the issue of trying to prevent the spread of the virus in the marketplace. Conclusion or resolutions. There are about 6 points in the preamble of the resolution. The first one, you consider or note the continued rise in the neighboring region, Senegal, that is the COVID-19 cases. And then in the second one, you noted the increment in the number of infected cases in the Gambia. And then most of whom you indicated are traced or could be traced from the immediate neighborhood, that is Senegal, precisely. In the third one, under-resourced medical facilities across the country. And in the fifth one, the fact that the Ministry of Health is yet to be received of the medical equipment that were procured for the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. That's also about the medical facilities as well. And then the fifth one, the ill-equipped and under-resourced of the state of the holding and isolation centers, as well as the lack of treatment centers across the country. That has to do with the medical side as well. And then the sixth one, the fact that a lot of people in the Gambia continue to live in denial of the existence of the COVID-19, as such grossly disregard social distancing or any protective measure at public places, publicly in the markets. That has to do with intensity of the sensitization program, sensitization activities for the people to accept the fact that the coronavirus is indeed real and then it is deadly. Now, looking into those preambles, I will note that 2 of them concern our restriction on the border. If we are to make mention Senegal, how to strictly control our border, the 2 points raised in the preamble concern about the border control. And then the other one, there are 3 of them concern about how do we provide more facilities at the health institution. That is our medical facilities. How do we enrich it in order to be in position technically to contain the virus? The last one, that is the issue of attitude to social distancing. How do we address the issue of attitude to social distancing? I believe that could be done in a better way in trying to intensify the sensitization to make sure the people fully understand the issue. Now, if these were the reasons advanced, why we should do the extension to yet another 21 days? I would have expected we should go beyond that. What we should have done is to, as Honorable Member for Serekunda did, point by point, regulations by regulations, to see where this regulation that we have passed 43 days ago, whether they were effectively implemented or not, what were their consequences over the people. This is what you should do. The state of public emergency is nothing without the regulations. If the regulations are effectively addressed, if they are not, what should we do? I think what the committee should have done is to do us justice, to review the regulations one by one and make recommendations and amendments where possible for this state of public emergency to be extended. But if this is not done, we are still going in that dilemma, knowing fully what we are doing is not going to be attainable. I am suggesting to the committee, before any extension can be effected, and this is a very strong recommendation I'm making, before any extension can be effected, let us review and recommend to the Attorney General for the regulations to be amended. Where they are feasible to be enforced, we maintain. Where they are not feasible to be enforced, we do our with it. As a law that is not enforceable is equally no law. This is the recommendation I am making to you before we can effect any amendment to before we can effect any extension to this state of public emergency. Finally, I will further recommend for intensive sensitization campaign to be mounted. Mass testing. We are living here. We are all living in uncertainty. We don't know who is infected or who is not infected. Can we continue to live like that? How can you fight an enemy that you don't see? We want to fight an enemy, we must see the enemy. And how do we see it? It is not about this restriction. We have to know those who are infected. Now, those who are infected, treat them. Those who are not infected, try to protect them. Now you want to protect, you don't know who is infected and who is not infected. Let there be mass testing. I understand very well that the MRC said they can extend from 100 to 400, but this is not adequate. We have to intensify the mass testing and then strengthen the border monitoring and control. Since most of the cases that we said they are imported from Senegal, and provide lucrative incentives to medical officers in the in the front line, as well as the security officials. The Ministry of Health, it's high time define the containment zones and the non-containment zones and allow flexibility in the latter. Those in Wuli should not be treated the same way those in the greater Banjul, as we have not got any case being reported from that area. It's high time the ministry define the areas that are containment zones and the areas that are non-containment zones, and further indicate the red zones, the blue zones, and then the orange zone, and then the green zones as well. Madam Speaker, this one is very possible. We need to promote the use of masks, frequent hand washing, and avoidance of handshaking. These are simple preventive measures that are able to be conducted. And above all, at all levels, encourage social distancing. These are some of the things we are able to carry out on our own without any restriction. On that note, I thank you, Madam Speaker.